This tent is one of the first of its kind and may actually change the way that backpacking tents are made in the future. This is the Tarp Tent Stratospire, and while the tent itself is not a new design, it has some very interesting updates that could change backpacking forever, but more about that in a minute. Because first, I want to point out that even though the Stratospire design isn't new, it's still very innovative. It was one of the first tents to offer the offset pole design, even predating the popular Durston X-Mid. And what I like about this design is while the poles are offset, they aren't so far offset that the walls start to close in, offering slightly better side-to-side headroom. I have been openly critical of the X-Mid, which is an awesome, incredibly innovative tent. Please don't mishear me. My main complaint is when you have two people in the tent, the distance between the offset poles causes the walls to slope in at an angle that gives slightly less headroom. Now, there are ways to improve this by not sitting side by side, but this isn't an X-Mid video, so I'm not going to get into it. The Stratospire has similar offset pole design, but in the Stratospire you get what feels like more usable headroom because the poles are closer together. But it comes at the cost of simplicity because the Stratospire uses a hex shape rather than the incredibly simple rectangle shape of the X-Mid. This makes the Stratospire somewhat harder to pitch. In fact, during the time that I've had this tent, I've had some pretty awful pitches. So this is a really crappy pitch of this tent, mainly because of all the rocks that are around and the limited space we had to put this tent in. But one of the things I really like about this tent is it's got these ridgeline guy lines that even if you can't get the ridgeline taut with the vestibule, as is the case with me right here, you can still get it taut with these ridge lines. And then not only that, but these guy lines are out of the way when you're getting in and out of the tent. And that is so nice. A few other notable features is the double wall design with an inner that can be switched out to make a 4-season tent. It's got a 50-inch wide floor that will fit 2 wide pads, and it has superb ventilation thanks to these peak vents as well as these corner vents that also have the added benefit of giving you more room on the inside. Those are all things I really like about this tent, but before I tell you how this tent could change backpacking, I want to talk about some cons. Probably the most annoying thing about this tent is the magnetic door tiebacks. This is a popular feature that has been copied by Durston and Z-Packs, but I believe originated with Tarp Tent. It's not a bad design and works well on most of the tents that I've used, except that on this tent it's not strong enough to hold the door. With even the slightest bump, the door comes undone due to how much tension the door is under. And I also need to mention that on a recent trip, I had quite a bit of water get in the tent. I'm not completely sure how the water got in. I'm suspecting a seam tape failure in the bathtub floor. It's hard to say because we endured quite a bit of rain. Tarp Tent is aware and has asked for this tent back so they can assess the problem. Whatever it is, I believe this is an issue with just my tent and not a design flaw of the Stratospire. Now, before I tell you how this tent could change backpacking, have you ever gotten frustrated with how expensive backpacking gear can be? Well, I put together a budget backpacking gear list that you can get for free simply by signing up for my email list. You'll also get extra content like behind the scenes, gear reviews, YouTube tips, and more. Sign up through the link in the description now for the part you've been waiting for. Okay, the one thing that makes this tent so different from others, and the one thing that might change the way tents are made in the future, is the material. This is a brand new Dyneema alternative called Ultra TNT, with the TNT standing for tent and tarp. Now, if you don't know what Dyneema is, it's the ultralight material of choice for backpacking tents. In fact, the lightest tents in the world are made from Dyneema. The only problem is Dyneema is fairly expensive, with some of the cheaper Dyneema tents coming in around $600. And that is the first advantage of Ultra TNT. It's not as expensive as Dyneema. In fact, this tent, the Stratospire Ultra TNT, is about $200 cheaper than the same tent made out of Dyneema. But as with most things, Ultra TNT is not as light as Dyneema, coming in at just under an ounce per yard. Most ultralight Dyneema tents are made with a ½ ounce per yard Dyneema, meaning the Ultra TNT is going to be twice as heavy, but it's also twice as strong, offering similar performance to 1 ounce per yard Dyneema, which is basically Dyneema that's twice as thick. This makes this a great tent for shoulder season camping and winter camping where weather is much more of a concern. That's one of the reasons why this tent is being offered with a solid inner for 4-season camping. And one other aspect where Ultra is outperforming Dyneema is in dimensional stability. So Dyneema is really strong and stretch resistant, but only in 2 directions. When you pull it in line with its fibers, it's got incredible strength, but if you pull it at 45 degrees from its fibers, it's going to stretch. Ultra TNT has fibers running in 3 directions and can be pulled in 3 directions without stretching. And since tents have forces pulling on them in multiple directions, Ultra is better for wind and weather resistance. Now, to the best of my knowledge, the 1 ounce per yard is as light as Ultra TNT comes, and when you compare it to the thicker 1 ounce per yard Dyneema, Ultra TNT seems to outperform Dyneema in every area except for one. It's not as puncture resistant, which means it should never be used as a floor material and never rolled with a fly against the ground. So Ultra TNT is never going to be the lightest tent material, but it does offer some impressive improvements over Dyneema. And speaking of industry-changing technology, have you tried an e-bike yet? So I don't know a whole lot about bikes, but this is the second e-bike I've been able to use, and all I have to say is they are a ton of fun. This is the Heybike Explore. It's a 750 watt brushless motor that can reach speeds up to 28 miles per hour, which doesn't sound very fast, but when you're zipping along on a bike, it feels really fast. I took it out to a friend's property to explore around and found that the suspension and aggressive 4-inch fat tires could basically handle anything. But it doesn't have to be an off-road bike. I also took it out along some windy roads and really enjoyed the way that the bike handles. It has 5 pedal assist modes, or if you don't like pedaling, you can just use the throttle to go as fast as you want with no effort. Then when it's time to slow down, the dual disc brakes bring you to a stop just as fast as you took off. It comes with a 48 volt, 20 amp hour removable battery that charges in about 6 to 7 hours. And unlike other bikes that I've used, you can't turn the Explorer on without the key, which provides an extra measure of security against someone wanting to take your bike. So if you want to get out and explore the forests or even around town, you really should try out the Heybike Explorer. Check it out through the link in the description and get $30 off when you use the code MyLifeOutdoors. If you're looking for an e-bike, you're really gonna like Heybike. Please like, subscribe, and do all those other things. And as always, thanks for watching.